Militar Problemas. Hey, it's Suze, and welcome to tonight's episode of Keep the Bad Guys Away. Hey, you know what? I can take care of this whole damn kid situation in one hit. Policía Militar Problemas. Aggression. Traded the kids. I swear they've traded the kids. They beat up the kids, they've traded the kids, and they're trying to come back and blame shit on me. Do you know, I'm trying to ascertain on whether or not I can make a missing persons report on my son, but in all honesty, I told, even when I asked the McAllen, Texas Marshal Service, if they could get my son, you know, which I don't think that they're getting him, but, you know, I even said to them, I'm like, look, you know what, these kids can't come back to the United States anyway, because they'll just do this whole thing, they'll just do it all again. You know what, law enforcement, they'll just beat up kids, they'll trade kids, they'll manipulate things, manipulate a child custody case, they'll bait the court hearings in the back, and they'll come up with all kinds of damn scams and all kinds of freaking excuses, and they'll just beat them all up, they'll destroy these kids' lives again. So the kids who are believed to be outside of the country, since the State Department said they had to figure out what airport they live from, they cannot come back to the United States. The children cannot come back to the United States even though they're United States citizens. So, here's a motive. This comes from a little book that I have on Amazon, which you can get for $3.99, download on Amazon Kindle, or you can get it for free on Script. Depends on whether or not you want to help me earn money to keep the bad guys away or not. But this comes from the Confidential Address Program, or the CAP program, the Nevada Secretary of State. My son and I were in that program because, you know, of course, the federal government wouldn't do anything to protect us. So when my son's father, the terrorist, files for custody of my son back in Humboldt County, California, back in 2006, based on the recommendation of Clark County, Nevada Family Court Judge, Chief Judge Ritchie Jr., tells him to go back to California and get custody right there in a family law hearing. Alan Harder can witness that, Attorney Alan Harder. But here's what the CAP program told me in 2006. So this is, you can read this, it's all online. It's actually a Nevada state case. It's a Clark County district case. The case is styled Asset Acceptance LLC, Citibank versus Susan Knisely, and I turned it into a short story. So here we go. Okay, it says, I called the CAP program. They told me I have to address the court despite being in the CAP program. They told me if I ignored it, the California court could give a default judgment. Then the California court would send the U.S. Marshals to CAP, and then CAP would have to go to the Nevada Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would determine if CAP should disclose the address to the U.S. Marshal Service to enforce the California court order. They said it's really a mess and I could still lose custody despite being in the CAP program. So I have a feeling what happened is, because no policies and procedures were followed on behalf of my son's major assault, you know, and even the district attorney that handled my son's assault case, she made a point. She made it a stiff point. Now, I don't know why she didn't do more, but she made it a stiff point to say in court that she found the situation unusual and thought that things were happening way too fast. So I have a feeling what happened is that they concocted this whole thing. They assaulted my son, the federal government, maybe this whole task force, which could include a deputy marshal. Nothing would surprise me. Keep in mind that a deputy marshal in Los Angeles committed homicide, so anything's possible. Law enforcement, at least. Probably the FBI. I'm sure this Mark Moore. Okay, so they probably timed it so they could assault my son, get my son away, and have him file for custody in California all at the same time, and then the marshals just executed a California judgment. This is all part of like how they were trying to make this look like nothing was going on, you know, in the front end when everything was being, you know, in the back end. Okay? Keep in mind, Attorney Randy Roski was furious to find out that my son got assaulted, and that my son got assaulted, you know, when Mark Moore was involved. So, you know what, he was pissed, and he did write a letter to Senator Harry Reid. So I was trying to ascertain today whether or not I can really make a missing persons report. And like I said, the marshals in Alaska, they got Pete's kids, the guy that I worked with at YK Hospital up in Bethel, Alaska. And he was like, oh, my deputy marshal, oh, you know, he's good. He said he's good. He is good. You know, Peter Herbst, Okay, this comes right off the U.S. Marshals website. Oh, but like, he said, make a missing persons report. Of course the Marshals will get your kid. Of course they'll get your kid. Of course they'll get your kid. Look at them in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Of course they'll get your kid. Well, I talked to this inspector up there, this Lisa Nobert, I'd left her a message, and then she's trying to blame everything on me. Get this. She's trying to blame everything on me. This is my fault. Okay? And then she's telling me she's not going to help me. She's pushing me to the Las Vegas FBI. Or she's pushing me to the FBI in general. Pushing me to the FBI. Las Vegas is the one that's trying to keep jurisdiction. Pushing me to the FBI. Anybody that pushes me to the FBI is a damn criminal. I said I have a letter about the FBI from Senator Dianne Feinstein. I left that in her voicemail. I have a letter I want to show you about the FBI. Of course, you didn't want to see that. Anybody that pushes me to the FBI, I consider them to be a criminal. Okay, and then she's pushed me back to the Las Vegas Metro Police, because that's where they left from. Of course it's where they left from, because you guys sponsored them leaving. Then the family court could send the U.S. Marshals to CAP. And CAP could go to the Nevada Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court could determine whether or not they should disclose the address to the U.S. Marshal Service. I'm sure this is what happened. So thanks, Marshals, for kidnapping my kid. If that didn't happen exactly, something close happened to it, because like I said, the State Department had to figure out what airport the kids left from. And my call to the Alaska Marshal Service today is because I was trying to figure out why the Bethel Police Department would not take a report. They would not take a report on my missing son. They would not take a report on my missing son like they took a missing persons report on Pete. So that's why I called, because I'm trying to figure this out, if I can make a missing persons report on my son. And all she wanted to do is push me back to the FBI and blame me and come up with every kind of fucking excuse. I get shoved around from city to city, state to state. I'm always losing my job in the goddamn freaking sting operations. I'm always getting hacked in sting operations. So, I can't keep in one district at a certain point. But when I was there, I want to know why the Bethel, Alaska Police Department would not take a missing persons report on my son, like they did for Pete's, and then go from there. But that was okay that the Bethel, Alaska Police Department didn't take a report on my son. That was okay. Anything that she can do to try to scapegoat out of the fact of any kind of responsibilities related to law enforcement abuse, misconduct, negligence, discrimination, anything that they can possibly do. Why? Because I think they worked in this conspiracy to kidnap my kid, not to mention none of us were in WITSEC. That's why I said I can take care of this whole damn thing really, really quick. Policía Militar. And the MPs, like I said, the MPs know me. Here's an International Criminal Court letter. Guess who's got a treaty with the International Criminal Court? Mexico. Guess who knows me in Mexico? The military police. I can have this whole thing just taken care of in no time. But just not. I think that the law enforcement in America, I think they do this all the time. I think this is very, very common for law enforcement in America to pawn children off for criminal information. I think it's very common for law enforcement to abuse people, physically abuse people, assault people, especially children. I think it's very, very common. I think it's very, very common for law enforcement to kill people just to cover everything up. It seems to be common practice in law enforcement in the United States. Beating up kids, pawning kids for criminal information, supporting terrorists, gravy training terrorists, gravy training other criminals, this kind of thing. I think it's very, very common. I only have evidence to prove for one disaster of a situation. So, but anyway, do yourself a favor. If you have kids, if you live in the United States and you have children, you can never ever help law enforcement on anything. Never. You can never ever help law enforcement. I mean, they tell you if you see something, say something. If they tell you help McGruff take a bite out of crime. But you know what? If you do, they destroy your life. They're especially pushing this, make these reports on terrorism. Because everything was so jacked up with 9/11 and everything else. You make a report on terrorism, you make a report on suspicious activity, this is where your life goes. They kill your family, they beat up your kids, and they trade your kids for terrorism information. This is what the legal system does, and they work in a conspiracy to do that. So, anyway, that's tonight's episode of Keep the Bad Guys Away. I'll see you next time.